July 16th, 1988. Wembley Stadium pulsed with the energy of 72,000 screaming fans. But backstage, in a moment that would change two lives forever, Princess Diana whispered 7 words to Michael Jackson that no one else heard. What she said that night didn't just transform Michael's performance, it sparked a friendship that would defy royal protocol and reshape both their destinies. If this incredible untold story moves you, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think Diana whispered to Michael before I reveal it later in this story. But to understand the magnitude of that whispered moment, we need to go back to where it all began. This isn't just the story of a royal meeting a pop star. This is the story of two souls trapped in golden cages, finding solace in an unexpected connection that would change both their worlds forever. 3 weeks earlier, in the marble halls of Kensington Palace, Princess Diana sat at her writing desk with a decision that would shock the royal family. She wanted to attend Michael Jackson's Bad World Tour, not as a royal duty, not for charity, but because she was, quite simply, a fan. The irony wasn't lost on those who knew Diana well. Here was the people's princess, beloved by millions, feeling more kinship with a controversial American entertainer than with the stuffy protocols of the British monarchy. Diana's fascination with Michael Jackson had begun years earlier, during some of her darkest moments as she struggled with the suffocating constraints of royal life. Her discovery of Michael's music had been accidental. In 1983, during one of her lowest points, when the fairy tale marriage was crumbling and the palace walls felt more like a prison than a home, Diana had retreated to her private quarters. Suddenly, the room filled with the opening beats of Billie Jean. And for the first time in months, Diana found herself moving. Not the careful, measured movements required at state functions, but real, spontaneous dancing. "Absolutely not," Charles had said when Diana first mentioned attending the concert. "The palace won't approve of you associating with—" He paused, searching for diplomatic words. That type of entertainer. But Diana wasn't asking for permission. She was informing. At 27 years old, she had already learned that royal approval was often at odds with personal happiness, and she was increasingly willing to choose the latter. Diana's love for Michael Jackson wasn't a secret among her close friends. She owned every album, knew every song, and would often be found in her private quarters dancing to Rock With You when she thought no one was watching. Her protection officer, Ken Worf, later recalled finding Diana practicing the moonwalk in her sitting room, laughing like a schoolgirl when she nearly tripped over the coffee table. Music was her escape, Worf remembered years later. She said Michael's songs made her feel free, like she could be anyone other than the Princess of Wales for a few minutes. When she listened to "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough," I could see the weight lift off her shoulders. For those few minutes, she wasn't trapped in a loveless marriage or suffocating under royal expectations. She was just Diana, dancing in her room. The palace staff had grown accustomed to Diana's musical preferences. Unlike the traditional classical music that echoed through most royal residences, Kensington Palace often reverberated with the infectious rhythms of the King of Pop. Young William, then 6, and Harry, just 4, would sometimes join their mother in impromptu dance sessions, giggling as Diana taught them simplified versions of Michael's signature moves. "Mummy, show us the spinny thing again," William would shout, referring to Michael's famous spin move. Diana would oblige, her face lighting up with genuine joy as she watched her sons attempt their own versions. These moments were precious to her, unguarded, spontaneous, real. Everything the royal protocol tried to eliminate from her life. When news leaked that Princess Diana would attend the Wembley show, the media exploded. "Royal rocks with Jacko," screamed the Sun. "Diana's dangerous liaison," proclaimed the Daily Mail. The Mirror ran a full-page spread questioning whether it was appropriate for the mother of future kings to associate with such a controversial figure. Palace officials scrambled to contain what they saw as a public relations nightmare. Emergency meetings were called, press strategies developed, damage control measures put in place. But Diana remained unmoved by the criticism. She had made her decision, and nothing, not Charles's disapproval, not the palace's concerns, not the media's sensationalism, would change her mind. Private Secretary Patrick Jeffson later recalled the tense atmosphere in the palace during those weeks. "It wasn't just about attending a pop concert," he said. "It was about Diana asserting her independence. making choices that weren't vetted by committees or approved by protocol departments. The establishment saw it as a dangerous precedent. Meanwhile, Michael Jackson was experiencing his own kind of pressure. The morning of July 16th, he woke up in his London hotel suite with unusual butterflies in his stomach. He'd performed for presidents, celebrities, and millions of fans. But knowing that Princess Diana would be in the audience felt different. This wasn't just any royal attending for show. This was someone who genuinely loved his music. Michael was more nervous than I'd ever seen him, recalled his longtime makeup artist Karen Fay. He kept asking about royal protocol. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I don't bow correctly? I told him, Michael, you're the king of pop. Just be yourself. But being himself was exactly what Michael struggled with most. Fame had created so many layers of protection, so many personas to navigate different situations, that sometimes he felt like he'd lost touch with who he really was underneath it all. Michael's team had briefed him extensively on royal protocol, how to address Her Royal Highness, the proper depth of bow, when to speak and when to remain silent. But beyond the formalities, Michael found himself wondering about the person behind the title. What was she really like? Did she truly understand his music, or was this just another royal appearance? He had heard rumors about Diana's personal struggles, whispered stories about her unhappy marriage and battles with mental health. In a strange way, he felt a kinship with her that went beyond their shared experience of intense public scrutiny. They were both performers, in a sense, constantly playing roles for the world's entertainment. As evening approached, backstage at Wembley became controlled chaos. Sound technicians ran final checks on equipment, costume assistants made last-minute adjustments to Michael's iconic military-style jacket, ensuring every sequin was perfectly placed. Security briefed staff about the royal visit protocols, creating additional layers of protection and ceremony. Michael retreated to his dressing room for his traditional pre-show ritual, complete silence, meditation, and visualization of the performance ahead. But tonight, his usual routine was interrupted by thoughts of the princess, who would soon be watching from the royal box. Then came the knock that changed everything. Michael, his security chief called through the door. Her Royal Highness has arrived. She's requesting the backstage meeting before the show rather than during intermission. Michael's heart rate spiked. This was unusual. Royal protocols typically dictated specific timing for such meetings, but Diana had requested an earlier encounter, wanting more time for genuine conversation rather than the rushed photo opportunity usually scheduled during concert intervals. He checked his appearance one final time in the mirror, the iconic Bad Tour military jacket, perfectly applied stage makeup, and not a hair out of place. But beneath the polished exterior, he was still that shy kid from Gary, Indiana, about to meet a real princess. The paradox wasn't lost on him. The king of pop, nervous about meeting royalty. Princess Diana entered the backstage area with minimal fanfare, having specifically requested a small entourage. She'd refused the palace's suggestion to bring a full royal detail, wanting this to feel as normal as possible. But nothing about this moment was normal. Diana wore a simple black dress that somehow managed to be both appropriate for her royal status and reflective of her personal style. Her famous sapphire engagement ring caught the harsh backstage lighting, but it was her eyes that truly sparkled, with genuine excitement and something that looked almost like relief. When Michael first saw Diana walking down the narrow backstage corridor, time seemed to slow. She was smaller than he'd imagined, more delicate, but her presence filled the space entirely. She wore that radiant smile that had captivated the world, but there was something else in her eyes, genuine excitement, like a fan meeting her hero rather than a royal fulfilling an obligation. The formal introductions were made by Diana's equerry, but both Diana and Michael seemed eager to move beyond the ceremonies. Protocol dictated specific behaviors, but both felt the artificiality of the moment and yearned for something more authentic. Your Royal Highness, Michael said, executing a perfect bow that he'd practiced a dozen times that afternoon. Please, Diana said, extending her hand with a laugh that immediately broke the tension. Call me Diana. I'm the one who should be honored. I'm such a fan of your music. The formal handshake lasted longer than protocol dictated, And in that moment, something magical happened. Two of the most recognizable people on earth looked at each other and saw something unexpected. Kindred spirits, both trapped in roles they hadn't entirely chosen, both yearning for authentic human connection. I have all your albums, Diana confessed with the enthusiasm of a teenager meeting her idol. I play Smooth Criminal so often that Charles threatens to hide my stereo. And don't tell anyone, but I've been practicing your dance moves in my sitting room. Michael's famous shyness began to melt away. Here was this iconic figure, this princess who graced magazine covers worldwide, talking about his music like any other fan. More than that, she was revealing something personal, something real about herself. Really? Michael asked, his voice filled with genuine surprise and delight. Which moves? Diana laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise even her with its spontaneity. Well, I've almost mastered the moonwalk, though I did trip over the coffee table last week, and the spin, though I got so dizzy I had to sit down. They talked for several precious minutes about music, about the universal language it provided, about how it could transport you beyond your circumstances. Diana spoke about how Rock With You had helped her through some difficult times, how human nature made her feel less alone during the hardest moments of her marriage. Michael found himself opening up in a way he rarely did with strangers. He spoke about the isolation of fame, about how performing could be both the most connecting and most lonely experience in the world. Diana nodded knowingly. She understood completely. But then Diana noticed something in Michael's eyes, a flicker of vulnerability that the cameras never captured, a nervousness that seemed at odds with his global superstar status. "Are you nervous about tonight?" she asked gently, her royal training allowing her to read people's emotions despite their attempts to hide them. Michael hesitated. This wasn't the kind of question he usually got backstage. Most visitors wanted photos, autographs, or just to say they'd met him. But Diana was really asking, really seeing him as a person rather than a performer. "I always get nervous," he admitted, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "But tonight feels different. Bigger somehow. More important." Diana nodded knowingly. "I understand that feeling completely. The weight of expectations, the fear that you won't be enough, that you'll somehow disappoint people who are counting on you to be perfect." In that moment, something profound clicked between them. Here were two people who lived their lives under microscopes, who carried the hopes and projections of millions, who rarely got to just be human. Diana, trapped in a failing marriage and suffocating royal protocol. Michael, isolated by fame and misunderstood by a media that alternately worshipped and vilified him. Diana glanced around the bustling backstage area, watching the controlled chaos of roadies, security personnel, and assistants preparing for one of the biggest concerts of the year. Then she stepped closer to Michael, close enough that no one else could hear their conversation. What happened next was captured by no cameras, heard by no reporters, and witnessed by no staff members who were all busy with their pre-show duties. In the eye of the storm, in a bubble of quiet intimacy amid the chaos, two icons found a moment of perfect human connection. She leaned in close to Michael's ear, her voice barely a whisper, and said 7 words that would echo in his mind for years to come. "Don't perform for them. Perform for yourself." Michael's eyes widened in shock. In his entire career, through all the coaches, directors, managers, and advisors, no one had ever given him permission to perform for himself. It was always about the audience, the ratings, the reviews, the sales figures, the critics' responses. But Diana, this princess, who understood the burden of public expectation better than anyone, was telling him to find his own joy in the performance. "Really?" he whispered back, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "Really?" Diana said, her eyes sparkling with mischief and genuine care. "When I'm at royal functions, smiling and waving, making small talk with people I don't know about things I don't care about, I pretend I'm performing just for my boys, William and Harry. It makes everything more genuine, more meaningful. It saves my sanity." She paused, her hand briefly touching his arm in a gesture of solidarity. "Tonight, don't think about the 72,000 people out there. Don't think about the cameras or the critics or the people who will analyze every move you make. Think about the little boy who fell in love with music in Gary, Indiana. perform for him. The show's 5-minute warning echoed through the backstage area, assistants scurrying to make final preparations. But neither Michael nor Diana moved to end their conversation. They had found something rare and precious in each other: understanding without judgment, recognition without agenda. "Thank you," Michael said, and Diana could hear in those two words how much her permission meant to him. It wasn't just about the performance. It was about reclaiming something essential that fame had slowly eroded. "Thank you for your music," Diana replied, her voice thick with emotion. "It's gotten me through some very difficult times. When I listen to your songs, I remember who I am underneath all the expectations and obligations." As Diana was gently reminded by her equerry that it was time to take her seat, she turned back to Michael one more time. "Remember," she said with a smile that seemed to light up the dimly lit backstage area, "tonight you're not the king of pop. Tonight you're just Michael, sharing your gift with the world because you love it." As Diana was escorted to the royal box and Michael prepared for his entrance, something fundamental had shifted. The nervous energy backstage transformed into electric anticipation. Michael's band members noticed it immediately. He was different, more centered, more present than they'd seen him in months. "Something happened back there," observed guitarist Jennifer Batten during the final sound check. "Michael's got this look in his eyes like he just remembered something important he'd forgotten." When the lights dimmed and the opening notes of "Wanna Be Startin' Something" filled Wembley Stadium, 72,000 people erupted in a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. But for the first time in years, Michael wasn't performing for those 72,000 people. He was performing for himself, for the joy of music, for the kid from Gary who just loved to dance. The difference was immediate and stunning. Michael's movements were more fluid, more natural, as if he'd been freed from invisible constraints. His voice carried new power, new emotion. His connection to the music seemed more authentic, more personal. Every gesture, every note, every step seemed to come from a deeper place within him. From her seat in the royal box, Diana watched with tears in her eyes, knowing that somehow her simple words had unlocked something magical. She could see the transformation in Michael's performance, the way he moved with newfound freedom and joy. It was as if he'd remembered why he started performing in the first place. During Billie Jean, the song that had first connected Diana to Michael's music years earlier, something extraordinary happened. Michael caught Diana's eye across the stadium, and for a moment, the 72,000 other people seemed to disappear. She was on her feet, clapping and moving to the music like any other fan, her royal composure completely abandoned. In that moment, Michael smiled. Not the practiced performer's smile, but a real, genuine expression of joy that the cameras captured and the world fell in love with. It was the smile of someone who had remembered what it felt like to perform purely for the love of it. The performance that night became legendary, not just for its technical perfection, but for its emotional authenticity. Music critics later called it Michael's best live performance of the Bad Tour, noting an indefinable quality that set it apart from other shows in the tour. There was something different in his energy, something more connected and alive. After the concert, Diana returned backstage for what was scheduled to be a brief farewell. The formal photos were taken, the required pleasantries exchanged with other VIPs who had been granted backstage access. But when the cameras were put away and the crowds had dispersed, Diana approached Michael one more time. They found themselves alone for a few precious minutes in his dressing room, both still riding the high of the incredible performance they had just shared. He as performer, she as witness to something transformative. "How did it feel?" she asked, her eyes bright with curiosity and genuine care. "Like flying," Michael replied, his face still glowing with post-performance adrenaline. "Like I was that little kid again, just dancing in our living room because the music moved me. I'd forgotten what that felt like." "Good," Diana said with deep satisfaction. "That's how it should always feel. That's how I want to feel when I'm doing my royal duties, connected to the real purpose, the real meaning, not just going through the motions." They talked quietly for a few more minutes about the performance, about the incredible energy of the crowd, about what it meant to both of them. As Diana prepared to leave, she paused at the dressing room door. "Michael," she said, turning back to face him, "would you mind if we stayed in touch?" Not for any official reason, just as friends who understand each other? Michael's face lit up with genuine happiness. I'd like that very much, Diana. As Diana's car pulled away from Wembley that night, both she and Michael knew something special had happened. It wasn't just a celebrity meeting royalty or a royal attending a pop concert. It was the beginning of an unlikely friendship between two souls who understood the unique challenges of living in the spotlight. That seven-word whisper, "Don't perform for them. Perform for yourself," became Michael's secret mantra. In interviews years later, when asked about his best performances, Michael would often mention that Wembley show without ever revealing why it was special. Diana, for her part, had found something equally valuable in their brief encounter. For the first time in years, she had met someone who truly understood the weight of public expectation. Their friendship, which would continue through letters and occasional meetings, provided both with a rare source of understanding and support. The whispered words that changed Michael's performance also changed how he approached his art and his life. He began to reclaim pieces of himself that fame had obscured, to remember the joy that had first drawn him to music. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen in whispers, in the spaces between the public and private, between the performed and the authentic. On July 16, 1988, a princess reminded a king that the greatest performance is the one that comes from the heart, not from the expectations of others. And in doing so, she changed not just that night's show, but the trajectory of two remarkable lives that briefly intersected in the magical chaos of backstage at Wembley Stadium. Their friendship would endure until Diana's tragic death in 1997, a testament to the power of authentic human connection in a world of artifice and performance. The seven words Diana whispered to Michael that night continue to resonate. A reminder that in a world that constantly demands we perform for others, the most revolutionary act might be to perform for ourselves.